If you feel like the truth is being kept from us, know that you're not alone. I'm Detective Ozma, and my mission is to dig up the evidence behind the mysteries they want to bury. Tonight's case didn't begin in secrecy, inside a classified lab or behind locked military doors. It began in the open, in small riverside communities in northern Brazil, where entire populations started looking at the sky, and then refusing to go outside after dark. In 1977, in the state of Pará, something began to appear. Not once, and not to a single witness, but repeatedly, across multiple towns. People described lights descending from the sky, beams that seemed to interact directly with individuals, causing paralysis, burn marks, and intense physical reactions. As these reports spread, so did the fear, until entire communities began to change their routines, avoiding the night and living with the constant expectation that something could return from above. When I opened the caller's file, one detail immediately stood out. This wasn't just another UFO sighting, because unlike most cases, this one escalated to the point of triggering a full military operation. Evidence 1, the first signs. Before callers became the center of the phenomenon, there were already indications that something unusual had begun. In April of 1977, in a remote area known as Ilha dos Caranguejos, 4 men reportedly experienced an unexplained encounter. One of them died, while the others were found with burns and injuries that were never fully clarified. The official cause of death was recorded as natural, but the broader circumstances surrounding the event were never conclusively resolved. While this incident is not definitively confirmed as part of the same sequence of events, many later interpretations suggest it may have been an early signal of what was about to unfold. Evidence 2, the light spread. As the months passed, reports of unusual lights began appearing across northern Brazil, extending beyond a single town into multiple regions. Witnesses described intense luminous objects moving through the sky, sometimes hovering, sometimes descending toward the ground, often behaving in ways that didn't match conventional aircraft. At first, these accounts were treated as isolated observations, but by mid-1977, a pattern had begun to emerge. And by September, that pattern intensified into something far more difficult to ignore. Evidence 3, the attacks in callers. In callers, the nature of the reports shifted dramatically. Residents were no longer describing distant lights in the sky, but direct interactions. According to numerous testimonies, beams of light appeared to target individuals, producing sensations of heat, weakness, tremors, and, in some cases, leaving visible marks on the skin. The population gave the phenomenon a name, chupa-chupa, a term that reflected the belief that something was draining energy or blood from those affected. What had begun as a series of sightings quickly escalated into a full-scale social crisis. Fishermen stopped going out at night, food supplies became limited, and entire communities began organizing rituals, fires, and even explosions in an attempt to repel whatever they believed was approaching them. At that point, this was no longer a collection of stories. It was a real disruption of daily life. Evidence 4, medical testimonies. At the center of this phase of the case was a medical professional, Wellade Cecim Carvalho, who worked in the local health post. She was not reporting second-hand accounts, but directly treating individuals who claimed to have been affected. According to her observations, patients presented symptoms that included weakness, burn-like lesions, small puncture marks, tremors, dizziness, and general physical exhaustion. These descriptions introduced a critical dimension to the case, because they suggested that whatever people were experiencing was not purely psychological. However, it is important to draw a clear line here. The existence of symptoms confirms that people were affected by something, but it does not, on its own, establish the cause of those effects. Evidence 5, the military operation. By October of 1977, the situation had escalated beyond the capacity of local authorities. With growing fear and increasing reports, assistance was requested from the Brazilian Air Force. What followed was not rumor or speculation, but a documented military response known as Operação Prato. Teams were deployed to Colares, Vigia, and nearby areas with the objective of investigating the phenomenon. They brought equipment for observation and recording, conducted structured interviews with residents, and systematically documented what they were being told. Dozens of testimonies were collected, including details about timing, distance, color, shape, and movement of the observed objects. This was not treated as folklore or superstition, but as an active situation requiring formal investigation. Evidence 6, the observations. As the operation progressed, the military began identifying patterns within the reports. Objects were described in varying shapes, including circular and elongated forms, often emitting lights that changed color and intensity. Some movements appeared inconsistent with known aircraft behavior, and in certain cases, the phenomenon was described as reacting to the presence of observers. At the same time, internal interpretations introduced a second layer to the analysis. Some notes suggested that the population was experiencing a form of collective panic, possibly influenced by fear, isolation, and media coverage. This created a dual narrative within the same investigation. On one side, there were consistent reports of anomalous aerial phenomena. On the other, there was an acknowledgement that social and psychological factors could be shaping how those events were perceived and interpreted. Evidence 7, the turning point. By late November, the operation intensified, with greater focus on callers and increased involvement from higher levels of command. Reports continued to accumulate, and according to later accounts from individuals involved in the mission, a specific observation occurred that was considered highly significant. Shortly after that event, a meeting was held at a high command level. What followed was unexpected. Instead of expanding the investigation, the operation was suspended. This decision remains one of the most debated aspects of the case, because no clear public explanation was ever provided for why an active and ongoing investigation into such widespread reports would be brought to a halt at that point. Evidence 8, the aftermath. Even after the main phase of the operation ended, reports did not disappear. Sightings and accounts continued into 1978, and additional missions were carried out to follow up on new occurrences. Over time, however, the case gradually shifted from an active investigation into a historical record. Decades later, portions of the material were made available through official archives, including documents, reports, and references to photographic and audiovisual records. These materials confirm that something was observed and documented, but they do not provide a definitive explanation for what was seen. Evidence 9, the contradiction. This is where the case resists closure. All elements exist simultaneously: a documented social crisis, medical testimonies, an official military investigation, and recorded observations of aerial anomalies. And yet, despite all of this, there is no final conclusion that resolves the case. No official confirmation of extraterrestrial origin was ever made. At the same time, no complete explanation was provided that fully accounts for every aspect of what was reported. What remains is a collection of fragments that never fully align into a single, definitive narrative. And if you've made it this far into the case, you're clearly someone who wants the full picture, the pieces they don't put together for us. So stay close to the investigation. Make sure you're subscribed, because the next files connect in ways most people never realize until it's too late. Now, back to callers. Conclusion. As I close this file, two possibilities remain. The first follows the official perspective, a combination of social panic, environmental factors, and misidentified aerial phenomena, amplified by fear, isolation, and the influence of media. The second possibility is more difficult to dismiss. Multiple witnesses described similar events, physical symptoms were reported and treated, and a military investigation was conducted that treated the phenomenon as something real and worthy of documentation. Yet, despite this, the operation was suspended before any definitive explanation was made public. Callers does not prove the existence of something beyond our world, but it does demonstrate how a real event can occur, be investigated, and still remain unresolved. I'm Detective Ozma, and I'll keep gathering every fragment, every voice, every piece of evidence they try to erase. Many stories get buried, but never forever. If you, or someone you know, has ever witnessed something unexplainable, leave your story in the comments. Or, if you'd rather stay anonymous, send it to the email pinned in the comments. Who knows, maybe the next file I open will be yours.